It was supposed to be just another night shift. The kind where time crawled between empty hallways and the faint hum of fluorescent lights filled the silence. Sam Carter moved his mop in slow, steady arcs across the marble floor of the executive suite, an area where people like him rarely lingered. The higher-ups had already gone home, their leather chairs left spinning, their expensive colognes still hanging in the air. Sam wasn't the type to snoop. He wasn't the type to do much of anything besides what was asked of him. But when he wheeled his cart into Director Alan Reeves' office and noticed a drawer slightly ajar, something made him pause. The brass handle glinted under the cold white light. "Quick in, quick out," he told himself. But curiosity has sharp teeth. Inside the drawer sat a thick manila folder with a label stamped in bold black ink, for internal eyes only. He glanced at the door, half expecting someone to burst in, but the hallway was silent. His hands trembled as he flipped it open. The pages inside were dense with numbers, dates, and signatures. At first it was just gibberish, a bureaucratic maze of financial jargon. But as Sam scanned the highlighted entries, it started to make sense. Money had been moved, lots of it. Funds earmarked for schools, public housing, and veterans programs had been siphoned into shell accounts. Millions vanished, with signatures rubber-stamped by none other than Director Alan Reeves himself. Sam swallowed hard. The weight of the discovery sat heavy in his chest. "What do I do with this?" he whispered. But before he could answer himself, distant footsteps echoed in the hallway. Someone was coming. Sam shoved the folder into his cleaning cart, buried it under rags and spray bottles, and forced himself to breathe evenly as the door creaked open. A night security guard stepped in, his flashlight sweeping lazily across the office. "Still working, Carter?" the guard asked, stifling a yawn. "Yeah," Sam replied, forcing a smile. "Almost done here." The guard nodded, muttered something about coffee, and walked away. Sam waited until the footsteps faded before he pushed his cart out of the office and into the dim corridor. His heart hammered in his chest as he wheeled the cart toward the janitor's supply closet, a cramped room with shelves stacked high with buckets and soap bottles. He tucked the folder behind a stack of rags on the top shelf and shut the door. "I'll figure this out tomorrow," he thought. But tomorrow would come too late. Hours later, as the first light of dawn crept over the city skyline, Sam returned to the supply closet. His shift was nearly over, and most of the building had begun to stir with early risers. He opened the closet door, reached for the stack of rags, and froze. The folder was gone. His stomach dropped. He searched frantically, pulling down boxes and knocking over bottles of bleach. But it wasn't there. It was just gone. No, he muttered. The sound of footsteps made him stop cold. A shadow passed the frosted glass of the closet door. Whoever it was, they were walking slowly, deliberately. Sam held his breath until the shadow disappeared down the hall. Someone new. Someone had seen the folder and taken it. The fluorescent lights buzzed overhead as Sam sank onto an overturned bucket, his head in his hands. He could walk away, go home, pretend he never saw anything, and let someone else deal with it. After all, he was just a janitor. No one would blame him for keeping his head down. But somewhere deep in his chest, a tiny ember flared. If I don't do something, who will? Sam didn't go home after his shift. Instead, he found himself in a corner booth at an all-night diner, nursing a cup of coffee that had long since gone cold. The folder was gone, but the knowledge remained a stain he couldn't scrub away, no matter how hard he tried. The doorbell jingled as a co-worker, Peter, shuffled in. Another janitor, older and slower, with tired eyes and nicotine-stained fingers. He spotted Sam and slid into the booth across from him. "Rough night?" Peter asked, lighting a cigarette despite the diner's no-smoking sign. Sam stared into his cup. "Pete, have you ever seen something you weren't supposed to see?" Peter froze mid-puff. His eyes darted around the diner before he leaned closer. "You talking about Reeves?" Sam's head snapped up. "You know something?" Peter exhaled slowly, smoke curling above them like a ghost. "I've been working here a long time, kid. Long enough to know you don't ask questions about the people upstairs. You see something? You keep walking. That's how you stay safe." "But what if it's wrong? What if—" "It doesn't matter," Peter interrupted. His voice was low, firm. "You're a janitor, Sam. You think anyone's going to believe you? Or worse, you think they're going to let you tell anyone?" Sam's hands trembled around his coffee mug. The weight of Peter's words settled heavily in his chest. Peter sighed, crushing his cigarette into a saucer. "Do yourself a favor, kid. Forget about it." But forgetting wasn't an option. Sam sat there long after Peter left, staring out the diner window at the faint glow of the rising sun. Somewhere in that building, someone was tying up loose ends. Someone who wasn't afraid to erase people like Sam Carter. He couldn't let it go. I have to find another way, he thought. Sam stood outside the government building's side entrance, the morning air sharp against his face. The day shift was filtering in suits, heels, briefcases, all walking briskly past him, heads down, eyes glued to their phones. He slipped through the side door with his worn-out janitor's badge and made his way toward the executive offices. The hallways felt different in daylight, brighter, busier, but still carrying the same cold weight of secrecy. Sam stopped at the cubicle of a junior clerk he recognized, Lisa Reynolds. She was always polite, always working late, her desk piled high with files. If anyone had access to sensitive information, it might be her. Lisa glanced up, her eyebrows knitting together when she saw Sam hovering by her desk. Sam, aren't you off shift? He hesitated, then stepped closer, lowering his voice. Lisa, can we talk somewhere private? She looked around nervously. What's this about? It's important, please. After a long pause, she nodded and motioned for him to follow her to an empty break room. The fluorescent lights buzzed overhead as she crossed her arms and waited. Okay, Sam, what's going on? Sam swallowed hard. Last night I found something in Director Reeves's office. A file, financial records, money being funneled into fake accounts. Lisa's face went pale. You shouldn't be talking about this. I know, but I can't just ignore it. The file's gone now, someone took it from the supply closet. But I need to know, do you have access to backups? Copies? Anything? Lisa shook her head vigorously. Sam, you don't understand. This isn't just some office scandal. People who dig into this, bad things happen to them. You need to let this go. I can't. Her eyes darted to the break room door. Listen to me, if you keep pushing this, they'll know. They always know. Just be careful, okay? Before Sam could respond, Lisa brushed past him and hurried back to her desk. Sam stood there, the weight of her words pressing down on him. They always know. But he wasn't ready to walk away. The summons came at lunchtime. A crisp email marked urgent summoned Sam to the director's office. He hesitated at the polished mahogany door before knocking lightly. Come in, came a deep, measured voice from the other side. Director Alan Reeves was every bit the polished bureaucrat salt and pepper hair, tailored suit, and the kind of smile that didn't quite reach his eyes. He gestured to the leather chair across his desk. Take a seat, Mr. Carter. Sam perched awkwardly on the edge of the chair, his hands gripping the sides. I hear you've been asking questions, Reeves began, his voice smooth, almost friendly. That's not really your role here, is it, Sam? Sam's mouth went dry. I'm not sure what you mean, sir. Reeves's smile sharpened. Come now. A janitor poking around financial records? Asking staff about confidential files? That's not very wise. The silence stretched between them. Sam could hear the faint ticking of a clock somewhere in the room. Reeves leaned forward, folding his hands neatly on the desk. You're a good worker, Sam. Reliable, quiet, but you're stepping into territory you don't understand. Do you know what happens to people who cross those lines? Sam said nothing, but his hands clenched into fists on his lap. Reeves's smile disappeared. They disappear, Sam. Their jobs, their reputations. Sometimes more than that. A chill ran through Sam's spine. Now, Reeves continued, his voice calm again, I'm willing to forget this little indiscretion. We can pretend this never happened. All you have to do is go back to your mop and your bucket and let the grown-ups handle grown-up business. Sam felt like he couldn't breathe. Reeves's gaze was sharp, predatory, waiting for a reaction. Finally, Sam nodded slowly. Yes, sir. I understand. Reeves leaned back, satisfied. Good man. Now off you go. Sam stood on unsteady legs, nodded, and walked out of the office. But as the door clicked shut behind him, a quiet fire burned in his chest. He thinks I'll back down. He thinks I'm too small, too scared. But he's wrong. Sam had a plan, and this time, he wouldn't leave any loose ends. Sam didn't go home. He didn't even leave the building. Instead, he spent the next hour circling back corridors and forgotten stairwells, staying out of sight of the cameras. The executive floor had a copy room, a tucked-away corner filled with humming machines and stacks of forgotten paperwork. He had cleaned it 100 times before, always careful not to bump the blinking servers in the corner. If there's a backup, it'll be here. Sam slipped inside, shutting the door behind him. The machines whirred and fluorescent lights buzzed overhead. He moved quickly, his fingers hovering over the panel of the main printer. He didn't know much about technology, but he knew enough. The printer logs would have a digital trail record of the most recently copied documents. His heart pounded as he scrolled through the tiny screen. And there it was, internal file, transfer records, restricted access. The timestamp matched the moment he had stumbled upon the folder last night. Someone had copied the file before it disappeared. Sam clicked reprint. The machine groaned to life, spitting out page after page of damning evidence, numbers, names, accounts, signatures. He stuffed the fresh stack of documents into a folder and tucked it under his jacket. But just as he turned toward the door, a voice crackled over the PA system. "Mr. Carter, report to the front desk immediately." The message echoed through the empty hall. They knew he was here. Sam's breath hitched. His window was closing. With shaking hands, he spotted a small USB drive wedged into the side of one of the servers. Without hesitation, he plugged it in, transferred the document files, and yanked it free. Every second felt like a countdown to disaster. As he slipped out of the copy room and into the hallway, he heard footsteps, quick, sharp, and coming his way. Sam ducked into a stairwell, his footsteps echoing in frantic bursts as he descended floor by floor. The air was tight, filled with the faint smell of bleach and sweat. Behind him, doors slammed open. Voices barked orders. They were following him. "They're not going to let me leave this building." His fingers closed tightly around the USB drive in his pocket as he burst into the basement level. The maze of maintenance tunnels spread out before him, poorly lit and filled with exposed pipes. The building was waking up. More people would arrive. More eyes. More risk. He crouched behind a stack of storage boxes, holding his breath as heavy boots clattered down the steps he had just descended. "Spread out!" one voice barked. "He's here somewhere!" Sam closed his eyes and counted to 10. When the voices faded, he slipped out from his hiding spot and crept along the wall. At the far end of the tunnel, a heavy metal door led to the delivery loading dock. Salvation. But just as his hand closed around the handle, a voice froze him in place. "Stop right there." Sam turned slowly. It was one of Reeves's men, a stocky guy in a dark suit. He was blocking the exit, his hand hovering near the inside of his jacket, where Sam could only assume a weapon waited. "You've got something you shouldn't have, Carter." Sam's throat tightened. "Listen, I'm not trying to cause trouble," Sam said, his voice cracking. I'm just trying to do the right thing." The man smirked. "The right thing? You think anyone's going to care about your little discovery? No one's going to listen to a janitor, Sam. You're nothing." But Sam's hand was already reaching behind him, fingers closing around a rusted wrench that had been left near the dock door. The man took a step forward and Sam swung. The wrench connected with a dull thud and the man crumpled to the floor. Sam didn't wait. He shoved the door open and stumbled out into the pale morning light. Freedom. But he knew this wasn't over. Not yet. "I have to get this to someone who can actually do something about it." His feet carried him away from the building, away from danger, and toward the only person he could trust. Sam's feet pounded against the cracked pavement as he cut through alleyways and side streets. His breath came in sharp gasps, the folder clutched tightly under his arm, the USB drive burning a hole in his pocket. He couldn't go home, not yet. He needed someone who could help. His mind went to one name, Eli Torres. Eli was a journalist at the Metro Chronicle, one of those reporters who still cared about the truth, even when it was messy, dangerous, or inconvenient. Sam had met him once, years ago, when Eli had done a piece on underpaid janitorial staff. The Chronicle's office was in a squat brick building downtown, tucked between a pawn shop and a bakery. Sam kept his head down as he slipped inside and made his way to the newsroom. Eli was at his desk, typing furiously on a keyboard with one hand while holding a phone to his ear with the other. His desk was a mess of coffee cups, crumpled papers, and sticky notes. When he saw Sam approach, Eli ended his call and leaned back in his chair. "Sam, man, you look like you've seen a ghost." "I might have," Sam said, his voice trembling. Eli's smile faded as he scanned Sam's face. "Okay, sit down. Tell me everything." Sam unfolded the folder and placed it on Eli's desk. This is everything, Eli. Millions of dollars stolen, public money funneled into fake accounts. And it's all tied to Director Alan Reeves. Eli's eyes widened as he flipped through the documents, his face pale under the harsh desk lamp. "Jesus, Sam, do you know what you're holding here?" "I know enough to realize I shouldn't have it." Eli rubbed his temples. This is airtight evidence. But Sam, people kill for less than this." "I know," Sam said softly, "but someone has to do something, Eli. Someone with a voice. Someone people will listen to." Eli nodded slowly. "Okay, leave it with me. I'll start cross-referencing these documents. But you need to disappear for a while, Sam. Go somewhere safe. Don't use your phone. Don't go home. Understand?" Sam hesitated, but then nodded. As he stood to leave, Eli grabbed his wrist. "Sam, you did the right thing. No matter what happens, remember that." Sam forced a smile and slipped out of the office, his heart heavy but his steps steady. The story broke 2 days later. It wasn't subtle. The Metro Chronicle ran a front-page headline in bold, black letters. "Millions stolen in public funds. Director Alan Reeves under investigation." The article was thorough, damning, and impossible to ignore. Copies of financial records were included as evidence. It was everywhere, on social media, on morning news broadcasts, even discussed by anchors with grim faces and carefully chosen words. Sam read it all from a dingy motel room on the outskirts of town. The USB drive sat on the table next to an untouched cup of coffee. The news anchors' voices blurred together. Director Reeves denies all allegations. Federal investigation underway. Whistleblower remains anonymous. But Sam knew the truth. His truth. The knock on the motel room door made him freeze. 3 soft taps. Sam approached cautiously and peeked through the curtain. It was Eli. He opened the door and Eli stepped inside, his face drawn and tired. "You did it, Sam," Eli said softly. "The truth is out." Sam sighed, the weight of weeks of fear and uncertainty lifting just slightly off his shoulders. "But it's not over, is it?" Sam asked. Eli shook his head. "No, Reeves has friends in high places. People who will try to bury this, twist it, or make it disappear altogether. But this story's out now. People know. That's the first step." Sam nodded. "So what happens to me?" Eli looked at him, his face serious. "You lay low, keep your head down, and if anyone comes looking for you, you disappear again. But Sam, you did the right thing. You might have just changed lives." Sam glanced out the motel window at the pale gray sky. For a moment, he allowed himself to believe it. Director Alan Reeves was placed on administrative leave pending the investigation. Cameras caught him leaving the government building, his usual polished mask cracking under the weight of reporters' questions. "Do you deny the allegations, Director Reeves? Where did the money go? Did you know about the offshore accounts?" Reeves said nothing as he climbed into the back of a black SUV, the door slamming shut behind him. But the investigation didn't stop with him. Names from the financial records started surfacing: consultants, shell companies, even other government officials. The story grew, like cracks spreading across glass. Sam followed it all from his motel room, watching as the powerful men he had feared were brought into the light, one by one. But he also knew the light was temporary. People would move on. Attention would fade. The world had a way of forgetting. Weeks later, Sam stood on a hill overlooking the city. The lights below glittered like scattered stars, and the hum of traffic floated up on the breeze. The weight in his chest had lessened, but it hadn't disappeared. He still didn't know if he was safe. He didn't know if Reeves's men were still out there, waiting, watching. But he did know one thing. He had done the right thing. In his pocket, he carried a handwritten note Eli had given him before they parted ways. Sam tucked the note back into his jacket and turned away from the city lights. Somewhere, someone was sleeping peacefully tonight because of what he had done. And for now, that was enough. Sometimes, doing the right thing doesn't mean winning. It just means refusing to lose. Sam Carter wasn't a hero, but he stood in the shadows, holding on to the truth, and that made all the difference. Call to action. What would you have done in Sam's place? Share your thoughts below, and don't forget to like and follow for more stories of courage and resilience.